Okay, let's dive into this. Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're doing a bit of an investigative breakdown into a document that, let's be honest, most of us just sign without actually reading cover to cover, a residential lease agreement. We're going to pull apart a real-world, modern lease to uncover the hidden stakes, the surprising responsibilities, and those absolute financial tripwires buried deep in the fine print. To navigate this dense legal labyrinth, we have a clear roadmap. We'll start off with 1, the lease basics, then 2, following the money. We'll look at 3, tenant chores and duties, examine 4, strict residency rules, and finally, wrap up with 5, fees, penalties, terminations. All right, Section 1, the lease basics. We are treating this document not just as a piece of paper, guys, but as a high-stakes, rigid blueprint for someone's daily life. Our source material here comes directly from Preferred Property Management, which is a division of Prep Realty based up in Calgary, Alberta. This grounds everything we're about to discuss in strict reality. This isn't some theoretical exercise. These are the actual real-world terms drafted for a tenant in today's housing market, governed by the Alberta Residential Tenancies Act.
So the specific property in question is the upper floor of 131 Amblefield Avenue Northwest. It's a fixed-term lease running from October 1st, 2025 to May 31st, 2026. That is an exact 8-month period where these tenants are literally committing their lives, their finances, and, as you'll see, their labor to this specific unit.
And this brilliantly illustrates the heavy reality of the agreement. These digital initials, CD and EH, pop up page after page, clause after clause. Every single time these tenants hit sign, they're legally binding themselves to incredibly strict conditions. Sure, it's so easy to just click through a digital document online, but man, as we're about to see, every one of those little initials carries massive weight. Which brings us to Section 2, following the money. Let's shift our focus to the immediate significant financial commitments required before the keys are even handed over. The baseline here is $2,350. That is the base monthly rent. And the lease is incredibly specific about how it gets collected. It's got to be paid exclusively through a pre-authorized debit portal. No dropping off a physical check, no cash, and it is due precisely by the 5th of every month. Absolutely no exceptions. But, that's just the obvious financial number. Now, consider this massive requirement. $1 million. The lease mandates that tenants must obtain and carry general comprehensive liability insurance for a minimum of $1 million for the entire length of the term. This is to cover against any negligent acts by the tenant or their guests. That is a serious 7-figure safety net that the property manager is requiring you to set up entirely on your own dime before you can even think about moving in. Okay, so the money is handled, but what's the actual daily reality of living at Amblefield Avenue? Welcome to Section 3, Tenant Chores and Duties. Honestly, you might be totally surprised by the sheer amount of physical labor expected of a modern renter. Let's move to and see how this builds into a really active maintenance role. I like to call this the filter trio. As a tenant here, you're entirely responsible for changing the furnace filters 3 times a year, the heat recovery ventilation, or HRV filters twice a year, and the fridge filters twice a year. You're not just paying rent here, you're essentially actively managing the property's HVAC and appliance systems. And wow, it definitely doesn't stop there. The sheer volume of exterior and interior upkeep is kind of staggering. You are on the hook for snow removal on city sidewalks, builder sidewalks, and back patios. You've got to handle lawn care, you have to replace broken toilet seats, and perhaps most interestingly, you are required to manage the shared City of Calgary garbage bins. The lease literally dictates the diplomacy of sharing bin space with the basement tenant. It notes that as the upper floor tenant, you have to ensure there's enough space for everyone and explicitly communicate if you need help taking them out while you're on vacation. Beyond all those physical chores, we're going to pivot to Section 4, Strict Residency Rules. This is all about the behavioral restrictions. This lease heavily monitors exactly who sleeps under the roof. For guests, you're allowed a maximum of 14 nights in a 6-month period. Think about that for a second. That means if a family member visits for a week in the summer and a week at Christmas, boom, you are already maxed out for the half year. Contrast that heavily monitored guest allowance with the absolute ban on unauthorized subletting or re-renting. The property management retains total, absolute control over the occupancy. And what if you actually need help with something? Well, the lease outlines a rigidly defined procedure you have to follow just to get standard maintenance issues addressed. You got to submit your work order through the tenant portal, and then you are explicitly told you must wait 5 full business days for a response before you're allowed to contact the brokerage on the 6th day. It is a highly bureaucratized system that demands a whole lot of tenant patience. So, what actually happens if you break these rules or, say, miss one of those chores? This brings us to our final stop, Section 5, Fees, Penalties, Terminations, the hidden financial tripwires. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how quickly daily mistakes turn into really steep fines. Look closely at these gotcha infractions. Did you put furniture near the garbage chute? Bam, that's a $200 fine. Miss an inspection appointment? $150. If you forget to shovel the snow or change one of those filters, property management can just do it themselves and charge you a cool $120 per offense. But the most staggering one to me, if you accidentally overpay your rent and request a refund, they literally charge you a $100 administrative fee just to give your own money back. No way, right? And let me tell you, the penalties escalate dramatically when we look at the move-out procedures. I want you to see this highly intimidating legal quote straight from the contract. It outlines exactly what happens if you don't leave the property exactly on time when your lease ends. To translate all that heavy legalese into plain English, this is called being an overholding tenant. Let's say the termination date hits at 12 o'clock noon on May 31st, and you're still carrying boxes to the truck at 1 p.m. Well, you are legally overholding. The penalty? Your daily rent rate is immediately doubled. They make absolutely sure that sticking around even a moment too long carries severe financial stakes. So, the crucial point is that getting out of this lease early is a staggering, catastrophic financial burden. If life happens, and you know life always happens, and you need to break the lease, you are on the hook for a massive multi-layered penalty. First, you have to pay a 1 month's rent administration fee right away. Then you must keep paying your ongoing rent until they actually find a new tenant. Plus, you have to pay a $500 re-rental fee. And the kicker? If they lease it to someone else for less money than you are paying, you have to cover that shortfall. Which leaves us with this final, truly provocative thought. We've seen the endless chores, the strict guest limits, the $100 admin fees for accidental overpayments, and those wild $1 million liability requirements. When you digitally sign your initials on a modern lease agreement like this one, are you just renting a home? Or are you taking on a high-stakes, part-time property management job where literally every mistake comes with an invoice attached? It definitely makes you want to go back and check your own lease clauses a little more closely, doesn't it? Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and remember, keep your eyes wide open before you sign.